Jai Shri Ram. Uh, I've been asked this question very often, and this is a very, very old debate, maybe 70, 80-year-old debate at least, is how many shares should be there in your portfolio. Now, this is again a difficult question to answer simply because each person has to suit himself or herself what they think is right. For example, you see focused funds today which are doing very well. You of course see focused funds not doing well, but focused funds are typically funds with less than 30 shares, less than 30 stocks. So it could be anything between 25 to 30, and they could have also a position like in say Bharti Airtel in the main share and in the partly paid share. So that is counted as one, I presume. So let us go back in history. I think it was 1950s that Markowitz said diversification is the only free lunch in the investment business. So he believed that there should be diversification. Phil Fisher said diversification is oversold. Let me quote precisely what he said. Investors have been so oversold on diversification that fear of having too many eggs in one basket has caused them to put far too little in companies they know and far too much in companies that they do not know. I think this is beautiful. This was said by Phil Fisher. Warren Buffett says only those who do not know what they are doing diversify, others run a concentrated portfolio. Most wealth in the world has been created by concentrated portfolios, including people who are single the promoters. For example, a Mukesh Ambani or an Azim Premji would have almost 100% of their money, or very close to at least 95-97% of their money in the companies which they run. Rakesh Jhunjhunwala may have started with a diversified portfolio, but about 50% of the wealth that he created was created by through Titan, right? So I may be wrong, but Titan and once upon a time CRISIL and all played very important role in the portfolio of Rakesh Jhunjhunwala. He surely did not have 25 shares of 4% each. He had a concentrated portfolio. So what is right and what is wrong is almost impossible to say. People have succeeded having a diversified portfolio. People have succeeded very well having a concentrated portfolio. So what should you do? That's the question, right? So if you want market returns, you have to own the market. There's no doubt. So whether it is the S&P 500 or the Nifty or the Sensex, whatever you want to own, you should own the whole thing. Just by investing in an index fund, you will be sure that you will get market returns minus costs. That's one way to look at it. And the other way to look at it is to say, I will hold, but I will hold different weightages to companies which I own. So I will pick stocks only from the top 100 or only from the top 30 or only from the top 50, whatever is the universe that you decide, but I will hold a different weightage, right? So that is one thing. The portfolio weightage that you have, that you can vary and therefore get a different return. I'm not saying superior return, but a different return. That is one more thing which you can do, but is again part of active management. And like I said, this debate is not new, and we have been doing this discussion for a very long time. It is almost timeless. Markowitz is the person who said diversification helps, and even Phil Fisher is not against diversification. He says it's oversold. So don't put too much money into companies which you do not know and too little money into companies which you know. This is the essence that these two people are trying to say. So what we are trying to look at is, if you have a single stock portfolio, it will obviously be volatile, right? The ups and downs. Even if you have just 10 shares, it will be less volatile than a single share portfolio. Having said that, you should also know how to diversify. Like you buy 10 banks or you buy 10 pharma companies, that is going to be violent. So you need to know how to diversify, and how to buy 25 shares which are partially not correlated, right? So typical example is you buy an umbrella company and an ice cream company, so that if it is bright and shining, people will consume more ice cream, and if it is raining, people will use the umbrella. So this kind of some kind of a correlation, if you can find stocks across market cap, you have large cap, mid cap, small cap, whatever, in whatever ratio that you want. If you do all those kind of things, perhaps you might be taking more risk, in the sense you might be having a more volatile portfolio. Remember, whether it was Markowitz or Phil Fisher, they were talking, in this case they were talking theory, but for an individual investor, adding an extra share is not going to be very easy. It takes a lot of effort, and you have to see and try to find that share which is going to outperform the market. That's the only way you will outperform the market. Now, if you don't want to outperform the market, if you want to do nothing, no point in searching for all this. Just go buy the index. That will work. Otherwise, you will have to check out how to buy the share, buy that extra share, and create alpha for yourself. So if you have a diversified portfolio, you run less volatility, but you might also get it completely wrong by missing out the market leaders. That risk you run. So some years your returns will be far superior to the market, and some years your returns will be far inferior to the market. Typically, any good portfolio manager you pick, whether it is a Prashant Jain or a fund manager Prashant Jain or Naren or Roshi Jain or Anand Radhakrishnan, any of them, you will find that they are reasonably good in tracking the index which they are doing, but there would be years in which they create alpha, which means you will have to have years in which they don't create alpha, right? So sometimes some other shares work, what you bought did not work, and you have an active and churning portfolio. So your goal, you should check out what it is that is your goal is, and from the also now going to what the random walk theory says is 25 shares should be enough for you to create enough diversification and less volatility. Typically the curve comes like this, after it drops dramatically and then it goes parallel to the x-axis. So there you realize that okay, 20-25 shares is enough. Now 20-25 shares, it's easy to know, it's not so very difficult to track. I know some people with more than 10,000 crores who have less than 50 shares, or maybe 55-56 shares with 10,000 crores, right? I've seen a portfolio like that. We have seen Rakesh Jhunjhunwala also running a huge portfolio where with a huge concentration, right? So sometimes you do this, sometimes you do that, and my take is I run a concentrated portfolio. I don't invest in the index except in an international index, simply because you can't invest in so many countries. So it's an international developed market index, and I also invest in a fund which looks to invest abroad. So in those cases I take the help of funds, but otherwise in my portfolio I'm pretty concentrated. I have a concentrated part and I have a diversified part, but largely the concentrated part makes up most of the wealth, most of the creation, and I've let it run for very long periods of time. So when you have companies which are doing well, which is precisely what Rakesh did, was to allow his Titan to run for a very long period of time, and that is what created wealth. So buying a few shares, letting them run long, especially if they are doing well, and selling the losers is one way of controlling how many shares are there in your portfolio. And when you're replacing a share, you see, will this new share perform better than the share that I already have? No, that is a judgmental call for you to make. So I think 25 shares is good enough for many portfolios, most portfolios including mine. Anything more than that, you have to really think whether it is adding value, or are you stuck to some for emotional reasons saying, oh, I will never sell this share. Then you at least know which portion of your portfolio may work, which portion of your portfolio may not work. So try building your portfolio based on all this, and I'll also understand towards the end of his investing life, Harry Markowitz said, look, I am 50-50 in stocks and 50% in stocks and 50% in bonds. That's it. That's what he did. But understanding diversification, understanding creating a portfolio like that is useful before you can make a statement saying I don't need to have a concentrated portfolio. But most of the wealth creation has happened in concentrated portfolios. So it's really a difficult call for most of us to take. And for most of the theory people, it didn't really matter whether they were adding 50th stock or 300 stock. But whereas as an investor, there is a cost of adding these stocks and tracking them. So if you can't do that, a concentrated portfolio is better. But please understand that your standard deviation will be high. For me, standard deviation is not a bother at all. I just don't care about standard deviation. I'm looking at absolute return. Since I'm an absolute return seeker in my portfolio, which is what I think everyone should be, to me it doesn't matter. I run a reasonably concentrated portfolio, but see what suits you. Thank you.